welcome to the show, Merlin. What a great name, by the way.
Thank you.
Your parents named you Merlin. Did they make you get into magic at all when you were young?
My mother actually named me Merlin DeVere, and her hope was that she would get a kick out of me being a medical doctor, MD Tuttle, MD. But it didn't work out that way.
Well, you're a bat scientist. How does one specialize in bats? How did that journey start?
Well, I was always interested in anything in nature. I started out at collecting monarch caterpillars and watched them make cocoons and hatch into butterflies, and then I went into a snake phase in which my mother was not happy with that phase. At 5, I was dragging in sometimes snakes 4 or 5 feet long, and they'd get loose in the house. And
oh no!
We moved into a new neighborhood one time, and a welcoming committee came over to welcome my mother to the neighborhood. And I had a few days before caught a 7-foot 8-inch coach whip snake that I was really proud of, but it got out. And we couldn't find it in the house. We thought it had gotten out of the house. The group's sitting around welcoming my mother to the neighborhood, and all of a sudden she sees everybody with a look of horror on their faces, and they're heading for the door. And this snake had reared up behind the couch and was looking for all the world like a cobra looking around. And only one of those women would ever even speak to my mother again.
That's hilarious. Your crazy son with his snakes. So you are a bat scientist. And
right.
The Secret Lives of Bats is one of your books, and the other one is The Bat House Guide.
That's the most recent one.
There's a lot of bats in Austin, Texas.
That's right. Actually, I moved to Austin because there are a lot of bats here, but there wouldn't be probably still a lot of bats if it hadn't been for my moving. When I first began to be interested in conserving bats, Austin was making more negative publicity about bats than any other place probably in the world. There were news headlines from coast to coast saying that hundreds of thousands of rabid bats were invading and attacking the citizens of Austin.
And was that nonsense?
Absolutely.
Why do you think people have this fear of bats?
Fear of the unknown. I mean, you're probably not totally unaffected. I mean, I know I am. When I'm much more nervous about taking off in a plane than riding to the airport in a taxi. And yet the taxi is far more dangerous than the plane.
Statistically speaking.
Right.
Right.
But we fear what we don't know, and it's very, very few people know much about bats, and so they're easily misunderstood and scared. And in those days, if a bat tried to catch a mosquito near somebody, the person would run like hell thinking that they were being attacked, and they'd never even look around to see the bat catch the mosquito and go on his way. And in fact, I had one guy that claimed he was actually, the bat actually did attack him. And when I looked at the evidence of the attack, I found these big scratches on his arm that a bat couldn't have inflicted. And turned out he'd run too close to a rose bush on his way to the house and got bit by the rose bush and blamed the bat.
So bats in Austin, what's interesting is this bridge on near Lady Bird Lake.
Right.
Right? And that bridge is famously a home for millions of bats, right?
Up to 1.5 million.
That's a lot of bats.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing when you watch them fly out. One of the first times I've ever come here, yeah, there you can see Jamie has a photo of it happening. One of the first times I ever came here, we went next to it, and you could hear the bats. Like you can hear them squeaking and stuff in there.
Well, when I first came to Austin, I had to face people who were signing petitions to have them eradicated. They were terrified of them. The health department had warned that they were mostly rabid and would attack people.
Mostly rabid?
Oh, yeah.
And what were they basing this on?
In the early 1980s, there were all kinds of planted stories in the news media by pest control and health people that made money off of fear of bats. And like Family Circle and Good Housekeeping magazines were running articles like 3 Years of Terror, Real Life Ordeal. And one of these stories had the family trapped in their home for 3 days and nights with bats attacking the windows and doors trying to get them. And so people were really frightened, genuinely. But all it took to overcome that is I ended up getting a bat of the kind that lives under the bridge, and I'd take him around and show him to people. And I remember one lady, actually it was Ms. Crenshaw, the famous golfer's mother. She thought, when she first heard I was conserving bats, she told her friends, she said, what next? Somebody's going to be trying to conserve cockroaches. But the first time I actually showed her a live bat in the hand, she was like, oh, isn't he cute? A whole different response. And so bats, once people meet them, they're their own best ambassadors. They're gentle animals that almost never bite anything except an insect or fruit, except in self-defense. And all I had to do was come to Austin and point out that this was a treasure not yet recognized. And because of convincing Austin not to eradicate the bats, today they bring millions of tourist dollars every summer to Austin, and they eat tons of crop and yard pests every night.
So that's what's important for people to understand, is they actually serve a very important purpose in the ecosystem, right?
Yes. A major part of my success in conserving bats has been that I look at it from a standpoint not just that bats or other animals have rights or anything. It's a matter of, like them or not, we need them. And if we understand them, we'll probably like them too.
And so this eradication idea that people had, that would have been a disaster, like ecologically. If they did decide to eradicate the bats and they killed all those bats that were under the bridge?
Well, what we forget is when people warn us about the supposed dangers of having bats around, the real danger is not having bats around. We could be practically buried in insect pests. Bats are the primary controllers of insects that fly at night, like mosquitoes. A recent study in Wisconsin showed that bats living in people's bat houses, in their yards, they looked at the droppings of those bats and genetically analyzed to see what they were eating, and they found that those bats living in bat houses were eating 15 species of mosquitoes, 9 of which carried West Nile virus.
Do we get West Nile virus in Texas? Is that common?
I don't think it's real common.
But it's possible?
Yeah.